The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional.
Good evening, everybody out there. This is Jack Gary. I'm your host here at Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio. Thank you so much for joining us again this evening. We've got a rapidly increasing listenership out there, and there's a lot that's been going on. Of course, the drones are all over the place, literally and figuratively. And there's lots of interest in the drones, and we'll be talking about them tonight from a little bit different perspective, probably than you've heard from other sources out there. But I think that once you hear this perspective and some of the evidence to go along with it, that you'll see where in the future there could be some of this come out in mainstream media and things like that. So that's going to be really interesting. I don't want to ruin it by giving out too much about what I'm going to talk about, but needless to say, we're going to delve deep into the heart of conspiracy tonight in an effort to find some logical explanation for the drone mystery. And along with that, we're going to explore and dive into what the Webbot is saying about all of this and what it predicted as far back as 2009 and even before that, this so-called melee in the sky would take place 39 days after the Joe Rogan Trump interview, which was forecasted as far back as 2009 by the Webbot. So when you look at that kind of amazing hit rate, and the Webbot's been more and more accurate, it seems like, over the past few years, from the original Alta reports, that now we're beginning to really see the information that were contained in those original Alta reports actually manifest and take place in our reality matrix. And one of those is this so-called, the media has been using the word invasion, alien invasion's been thrown around, and the Webbot predicted that that would be the language that would be used by mainstream media and the public at large, that there would be some sort of invasion coming from the sky, that this would lead to a melee in the sky, which would be UFO versus UFO, UAP versus UAP, drone versus UFO type of activity taking place and visibly taking place. Last week, we talked about the Webbot and the fact that it had predicted, really, when you look at it, it's predicting meaningful contact outside of officialdom. And a lot of that activity has begun to take place. So along with the drones that are out there, we are seeing a plethora of other kinds of video coming in and close-up still photographs that are clearly depicting and showing something other than even the most advanced drone technology. They're showing plasma orbs and what some people are calling plasmoids. Some people hold the paranormal belief that these are energy beings that live among us here on the planet, and they are somehow showing themselves during this whole affair. But the Webbot says differently. And the Farsight Institute, which is made up of some of the most advanced remote viewers on the planet and in history, are also pointing a different direction and saying that there is, in fact, a big ET happening, taking place right now. And there's two separate groups of ETs that are in contention for really control of this planet. And one of them has been in control for a very long time. And the other basically is attempting a rescue of humanity. If you've listened to the Farsight Institute remote viewings, that's basically what it comes down to, and that this will lead to actual confrontation. And it's interesting that that matches what the WebBot had predicted with, it was basically saying that you'll begin to see the contention take place of the melee in the skies, because it eventually descends into a real melee. And people are like, what is a real melee? Well, when you look up the clinical or the actual definition of a melee, that's a combat-like situation that descends into almost chaos. You know, an example would be Custer's Last Stand. that kind of a thing. So the interesting thing about the drones right now is that people have a very short memory, and they don't realize that we've been through drone swarms before, and some of that took place in 2023, and it's when you begin to go down that rabbit hole. You begin to actually go through some very, very interesting information that has to do with what might be an active conspiracy taking place right here and now before our eyes. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You know, I usually do paranormal in the news, and I think it's interesting because it's fitting for tonight's investigation into the drones, that there is a plethora of drone headlines out there, as you can guess. And one of those, however, really caught my eye because it matches some research that I've been doing over the past week. And in it, the headline says, according to police, an SUV-sized drones fast as 120 miles per hour terrorized a town's livestock. This is being run by Daily Mail, and it says the police chief of a small Nebraska city has come forward with a warning for New Jersey after his community was terrorized by mystery drones. ORD, or Ord, Nebraska, which is the town name, Police Chief Chris Grooms revealed to Daily Mail how Valley County, Nebraska, and its surrounding regions were besieged for weeks from December 2019 into 2020 by upwards of 40 to 50 drone UFOs at a time. Across nearly 3 weeks of nighttime encounters, typically between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., these inexplicable SUV-sized drones operated with impunity, Chief Groom said, and sometimes seemed to be toying with law enforcement. A lot of reports by ranchers stated that these objects were harassing their horses or cattle on a nightly basis, he added. Some of the drones reached speeds of 120 miles per hour. So this happened all the way back in 2019. And you can see the roots of really what we're seeing today. That obviously was the beginning testing phases of what we are seeing today. And there are plenty of people out there, many of our politicians included, that keep showing up on mainstream media sources. And one of them even said, oh yeah, there's a Iranian mothership parked off the coast and it's launching these drones. I mean, how ridiculous. You have John Kirby at the Pentagon, who basically comes out every day and tells the public that they're not to believe their lying eyes, right? So, and that those are all just airplanes, etc. Very interesting. Cyber news. running a headline, UAPs, glowing orbs, mystery drones, and the questions we can't ignore. That's a good headline. Drone sightings reported across eastern U.S., according to American Military Magazine. There are, of course, your generalized idiots out there that are flying their little hobby drones that they can fit into backpacks and whatnot during all of this, thinking that they're somehow going to add to the confusion and mystery. And those people are showing up in the headlines too. Simple Flying Magazine is running an article about 5 unexplained UAP sightings reported by U.S. military pilots. That's very interesting. Daily Mail again, and an interactive map reveals mystery drone hotspots. And if you look at the hotspots, you know, they're happening all over the country and in a few other countries as well, which is very interesting. And we have to realize that according to the Webbot and according to the Farside Institute, we should be seeing a lot of ET UFO activity taking place right now. The fact that the drones have shown up during a period of a high UFO flap is part of the mystery that's taking place. New York Post is running an article about Enigma's UFO spotting app soars by 74%. So apparently there's a UFO spotting app out there that's supposed to be pretty good. We'll have to check that out. And yeah, it goes on and on, guys. It's interesting how many paranormal headlines are all about the mystery drones, and the fact that, you know, I can hardly wrap my brain around the idea that it was way back in 2009 that I read all of this was going to take place. And I remind people that when it comes to the Webbot, that particular events act like time markers. And those time markers happen, these events, smaller events, will take place before a larger event. And that's really your only warning that you're approaching the larger event. And that's because of the really funny nature of time itself. And nobody really knows what time is. And Einstein even said time didn't exist, and yet space and time are said to be the same fabric, which leads us into UFO propulsion and all of that. But it's just an interesting thing that we've come to a place now where tonight we're going to kind of see conspiracy interacting with cyber prophecy, if you will, with remote viewing and human psionics or human psychic abilities, which are going to become more and more forefront in our society over time. There's a number of really respected researchers and journalists out there, Ross Coulthart among them at News Nation, who right now, News Nation, by the way, guys, is probably your best bet for the cleanest information that you're going to get from a mainstream source right now. And Ross Coulthart's kind of been right in the middle of the whole disclosure movement. And even he is saying that his sources are telling him that, and he's got a lot of intelligence sources, real intelligence sources are telling him that there have been inroads, progress made with some of the retrieved craft that they have in their possession. But those inroads are in the realm of human psionics, not in actual manufacturing, which is very interesting. So they've been able to make craft that look like alien craft, but they can't manufacture them in quite the same way because they're manufactured on a subatomic level. That's what his sources are telling him. And what's even interesting beyond that is the fact that these craft appear to interact somewhat telepathically or psionically with the inhabitants or the pilots of the craft themselves. So before I get in too deep, I wanted to invite everybody over to paraintelagency.com. That's where you can see the heart of the Paranormal Intelligence Agency. We've been around for about 20 years now online, and we publish insider reports having to do with all of our investigations. And you'll see things in our insider reports that simply are not available elsewhere, so come by and check us out. If you're somebody that's out there that is a paranormal investigator that likes some of the latest and greatest research taking place and a consistent source of new intelligence coming in, then it's a great source for you. And you'll have to come by and check it out and give us a good like on Facebook as well under Paranormal Intelligence Agency. But the PIA investigation has turned up some really surprising information this week. And when it comes to the drone mystery, there has been a world of speculation coming from all corners of social and mainstream media. But as I was stating earlier, one dark tentacle of this mystery appears to have begun in what is known as the COG, or Command of Continuity of Government. In other words, this is called the COG Command, and that stands for Continuity of Government Command. Many in our society have, as I was saying, very short memories about drone swarms, but there have been drone swarms in the past. And what is different about this time is the sheer scope and scale of the operation. This time also appears to be happening while a legitimate, unparalleled UFO/UAP flap is also taking place. There's a number of layers to this mystery. The first layer appears to be an operation that has its roots in a top secret program, and you've heard it, you'll hear it here for one of the first times, guys, but it's a top secret program known as Homeland Synchronizer. And just like that, we're probably on a list somewhere. But that's okay. We get put on lots of lists at this show because on this show, we put out the truth of what's taking place. But the purpose of Homeland Synchronizer, its main purpose, is to monitor and data mine the public reaction while creating a panic-like situation in the populace below using large-scale drone overflights. At the heart of the drone swarms, really though, lies the false narrative being fed to our congressional leaders by the intelligence community. And let's face it, over the past, well, this last congressional hearing had 4 guests on there, and an argument could be made that all 4 of them were CIA related. That's a problem. We're still not hearing from the people inside the SAP programs. But there's a false narrative. And that false narrative is being fed to our congressional leaders by the intelligence community about the nature of the ETs. The intelligence community has been feeding a negative narrative about the aliens' intentions to the pro-disclosure elements of our government. And key to this narrative is the fact that the COG, or Command or Continuation of Government Command, which would assume power over the rest of the country in case of, say, a nuclear war, appear behind this current drone operation. In this case, they appear to be planning continuation of government in the face of a possible overwhelming UAP threat. Like I said, this mystery has many layers. This has conspiracy written all over it, and the scenario would play out like this. The deep state, who we know are in possession of ARVs, or alien reproduction vehicles, would stage a fake UFO invasion or simple attack. A UFO invasion using back-engineered alien craft, or ARV, alien reproduction vehicles, to perpetrate a false flag operation on United States citizens. This would allow the COG, or NORCOM, as they are known, to suspend the Constitution in the face of a dire threat to our survival. They could then assume full power of governance over the people. The idea is to introduce a threat, a UAP threat, that appears so overwhelming that they can ratchet up emergency response to the point where they can trigger the actual COG laws, which are the continuance of government laws. The head of the COG is a general, and his name is General Gregory Jalot. Yep, we even know his name. The deep state just lost a crucial election. And the fear is that they, by which I mean the COG, go from a drill status to a live status, to a live operation before a peaceful transfer of power in the White House can take place. Either way, the operation would be quite effective. The COG is supposed to hold elections once again upon the passing of the threat. These measures were put into place during the Cold War to ensure the American way of life. These COG drills actually began as far back as 2023. And if you go to any search engine and type in drone swarms Langley Air Force Base, December 2023, you're going to see the birth of what is happening today. At least you're going to see where one of the tentacles of all of this really leads. And this is where things really get interesting. By the way, if you look up those drone swarms going back that far, you're going to come up with a plethora of articles about drone swarms that were happening anonymously. They could never trace them, but they were happening in Colorado for a very long time. I know because I lived there at the time that they were occurring. They were happening in a lot of rural areas, and that was the beginning of what you're seeing today, the roots of the plan. And this is where things really get interesting. The WebBot and the Farsight Institute have both previously predicted that there would be a large amount of UFO, UAP activity at this time. The WebBot predicted that there would be a so-called melee in the skies involving UFO activity, and that this would begin to appear exactly 39 days after the Joe Rogan Trump interview. That interview served as a time marker for this current activity going back as far, like I said, as 2009. Even bigger events are predicted to occur as all of this activity is occurring. And it's interesting because, and this is before we go to break, I'll leave you with this little bit of a dire warning, if you will. The WebBot predicts that the current war situation gets out of hand. Like really out of hand. This coincides, by the way, with a demise in the US dollar. And all of this leads to a point where the ETs that are here now in our skies are actually going to have to intervene. And it's at that stage that everything changes. And we'll talk about all those changes right after our break.
Not on my watch, our military service members say, as they volunteer to serve. Not on my watch, they say, as they leave their families behind to keep the rest of ours safe. As they move out, stand firm, and take fire. So not on our watch, we say, to the severely ill or injured veterans who can't get the care they deserve, the therapists they need to walk again, the treatment they need to talk again, the lifetime of day-to-day help they need to live full and independent lives. When there's no more government funding, or a nursing home seems like the only option, or everyone says there's no hope for recovery, we won't leave one warrior behind. Not on our watch. Find out how you can do your part at findwwp.org.
In deep dark wood where shadows lie, Bigfoot sneaks with piercing eyes, footprints lodge in the silent night, a beast untamed, it's out of sight. Through the fog in a misty blur, a chilling round your blood to stir. Strange creatures on a restless night disappear with fading light. Falling footsteps out of time, mysteries in the forest ride. Wonder where the pines grow tall, echoes from another age call. Time bends twisting the whispering leaves. Who knows what lurks, what deceit? Lost in thought, we drift away. Different world in the light of day. Past and present blend as one. In the forest where there's no sun. Ghostly visions they come and go. Secrets hidden we may not know. Dormant flowers speak for homes. In these woods they make their home. Strange creatures on a restless night disappear with the fading light. Time slips, seconds all the time. Mysteries in the forest ride. Rise. Wonder where the pines grow tall, echoes from another age call. Time bends twisting the whispering leaves. Who knows what the forest ride? Mysteries in the forest ride. Wonder where the pines grow tall, echoes from another age call. Time bends twisting the whispering leaves. Who knows what lurks, what deceives? Lost in fall, we drift away. Different world in the light of day. Past and present blend as one. In the forest where there's no sun. Ghostly visions, they come and go. Secrets hidden we may not know. Dogman prowls, Bigfoot roams. In these woods they make their homes.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio. We're the show that explores all things paranormal, all this crazy conspiracies happening around the world, and every once in a while we come across something that's just strange and unusual that we like to share on the show. But tonight, it's all about the drones, the drone mystery, the evidence that the PIA has come up with over the past week or so in the course of all of my research, pointing the finger to the idea that what we are looking at here is a COG operation, which is a continuance of government operation. Now, here's where things get really interesting. So, this General Gillette, however you want to pronounce his name, presumably, if he's able to trigger emergency powers to the point where it triggers the COG, it would be in the face of an overwhelming UAP threat, correct? And otherwise, it would be something like a nuclear war, in which case, a continuation of government would, response of some kind would make sense. But in that case, what ends up happening is that general, whoever's in charge of NORCOM, ends up dividing the country into various zones, and then they basically put into power a governor of each zone, right? And at some future point, they're supposed to hold lawful democratic elections to basically reinstall the government. And, it's interesting to me that you have all of this happening when the powers that be in the military industrial complex and these special access program groups and the alphabet agencies like the CIA and the NSA, etc., knew that this heightened activity was going to take place, because let's face it, they are also involved with our secret space program. And the secret space program is intimately involved with what is happening right now. It's interesting that you also have things like strange radiation signatures being detected, and according to some sources all along the East Coast, you have close proximity to places like Montauk. You have heat signatures. You have all kinds of stuff that is accompanying these drone swarms. But all of that could be part and parcel of the COG operation, because what they are doing is data mining every tiny little response that's taking place in the public right now. All of that will play key to the role if they end up taking power. So it's very interesting. You have a scenario where for the last 80 years, you have a military industrial complex that has hoarded alien technology, attempted to weaponize it, only to basically create a situation where they have become what has been termed by the webbot itself as a breakaway civilization. And central to the key workings of a breakaway civilization is the fact that the COG, or the continuation of governance command, has kind of become its own entity over the last few decades. And right now, when you're having this very contentious period of time in the political life of America, when you're about to have a peaceful transfer of power to someone who the deep state absolutely fears to their very bones, do you have a scenario by which you could have something like the COG use what they describe as an alien invasion to ratchet up the emergency powers to the point where they could actually trigger the COG to take place. Because if you can do that, then what you'll do is end up saving them from what, let's face it, it was a catastrophic election for the deep state. Absolute catastrophe. And at the same time, the so-called banksters out there, the bankers that are running the war machine, are realizing that they are about to face total decimation of the fiat currency system. All of that is coinciding into this hole that we're beginning to see right here and right now. And guys, we're talking about rapid predicted change. Over the course of, the Alta reports, the original Alta reports came out way back, in 2002, and then some more like in 2009, they were refined somewhat. But these predictions go all the way back then, and they're highly detailed. These are just generalizations of some kind. And if you're unfamiliar with halfpasthuman.com, with Cliff High, with the WebBot, I would familiarize yourself with it post haste because of the accuracy that the WebBot's been able to achieve time and time again has been one of those amazing things. So you have a lot of detractors out there that say, oh, the WebBot was wrong about this and this. No, they were wrong about this and this when you thought it was going to happen. But nobody took, it doesn't give you an actual specific period. It says after a such and such event takes place, this much larger event will also take place within a given amount of time. That's how it actually works. So, and this is where things really, I keep saying this, but it's where things really get interesting, because along with this whole melee in the sky, this drone operation, the PSYOP, if you will, being run by the COG. And you have to realize these politicians, they don't have, as high as their security clearances are, even the guys that are on like the intelligence oversight committees, etc., those security clearances aren't even close to what would be required to have knowledge of a COG operation. It is one of the closest guarded secrets ever. And of course, if they were foreign adversarial drones of some kind, we would be knocking them out of the sky. We can track something as small as a basketball coming from 200 miles out in space, and we could do it in 1973. Trying to tell us that they don't know where these drones are coming from and returning to. They absolutely can trace that information, and it's ridiculous that they're saying that they can't, but they don't have the clearance to know where those drones are being launched from. So even though our satellites can see that information is above top secret right now when a COG operation is running one of its operations. And again, this particular operation is called Homeland Synchronizer. So the more you can use that online, the more you will sync their operation, really. So, but the Farsight Institute has stated for a while that they believe that there are two ET groups vying for control of the Earth and the human population with it. One group of malevolent ETs apparently signed a type of treaty in 1954 under the Eisenhower administration. This leads us into the testimony of Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of Eisenhower himself, and who claims that not only were those treaties signed by her great-grandfather, but that it did allow for some ET technology to come into our possession, and that some of this led to an operational colony on Mars, which is there today. something which has been verified through high-resolution photographs that actually were found by the Farsight Institute. We'll get to that at some point in one of our episodes, but this is kind of our Christmas special episode because, hey, let's face it, this is a here and now happening mystery, which is fascinating. But this allowed for this treaty that Eisenhower signs, allowed for human experimentation in return for alien technology. That's the dark secret that they don't want to let out. At the heart of the reason they don't want to acknowledge the UFO alien presence is the fact that they are abducting people. And more than that, Farsight claims that the malevolent ETs are running what is tantamount to a cosmic human trafficking ring on this planet. Think about that. Think about the Alaskan Triangle, where 16,000 people have vanished without a trace in a 30-year period. And that's just a drop in the bucket. See, the second group of ETs, according to Farsight, are far more benevolent and are about to make themselves known to the masses, but that there will be visible confrontation between these two groups in our skies. The Webbot likewise reiterates that the populace becomes well aware of the alien presence on this planet. And when it does, it creates huge social change. It leads to a complete overhaul of belief systems worldwide, upending religions and governments alike. That's what's about to happen. And it happens in short order, guys. This isn't something that you're going to see your kids go through someday. This is something you're going to go through, and you're going to go through it within just a few months. The Webbot predicts that the demise of the US dollar and the release of the JFK assassination files will cause total disclosure to take place. Shortly after all of the hoarded technology that's been back engineered from alien tech by the so-called breakaway civilization will be released to the world's populations. This is something that the Webbot states will happen. And this might just be in an effort from the deep state. They basically just throw it out there and say, here you go, you can have it all, in an effort to save their own skins. Because the people are going to be vastly upset about the secrecy surrounding this technology and the ETs. And, you know, the Webbot describes a time when you're just going to have a day when millions of people wake up and they just give up. They just don't go into work that day. Because it'll be something like where, you know, the money's not worth anything, and it's definitely, you know, it's decreasing in value by 40% every month. And, you know, it's one of those things where if you get a paycheck, you end up having to spend it as quickly as possible because you're trying to spend it before the money loses any more of its value. That's what we're facing in a very real scenario in the very near future. But beyond that, and past the collapse of the US dollar, good things probably are waiting on the other side. You're going to have a system that's not based on debt anymore. Isn't it amazing how the paranormal comes full circle into your everyday life and economics? And see, there's another more amazing aspect to all of this, and that is that these craft are constructed using a type of physics which can bend reality. It is known to a few investigators that scientists involved with the UFO back engineering programs that are acknowledged, unacknowledged SAP or special access programs have to limit themselves to 20 minutes or less while working in these craft. Otherwise, they suffer from very interesting and paranormal side effects. Some of these side effects include hearing disembodied voices, sometimes seeing dead loved ones, and all kinds of other paranormal phenomenon. this is part of what the secrecy is all about. And how else do you guard a technology that renders local reality obsolete, operates through the psychic or telepathic impulses of the pilots, and could be the ultimate weapon? I mean, guys, things are about to get very, very interesting. And, you know, it was in the course of doing the research into the story that I came across a fascinating, well, I remembered it from a while back, that the Navy, it was discovered, had applied for and received patents to UFO type technology. And some of that technology, they claim, according to one headline, U.S. Navy controls inventions that claim to change, quote, the fabric of reality. That comes from bigthink.com. And if you go to any search engine, it really doesn't matter because it will show up, and type in Navy UFO patents and flip through those and begin to read what they're talking about. Because they talk about how this scientist, Salvatore Pais is his name, apparently had some sort of major breakthrough, or this was some sort of psyop for overseas governments to say, wow, the U.S. must have amazing technology if they have these kinds of patents. Well, one of the patents describes the fact that they have a device that literally alters reality itself. Now, they say that, and this is a quote from the article itself, if the vacuum creating technology can be engineered, we'd also be able to engineer the fabric of our reality at the most fundamental level, states the patent. So you have insiders leaking interesting information about how these craft are constructed in such a way that they follow a completely different kind of physics. And I'm constantly, with the UFO phenomenon, and especially lately, I'm constantly reminded of the quote from Arthur C. Clarke, who was not only a great author, but also the inventor of the communication satellite, who said that any sufficiently advanced science will be indistinguishable from magic. And what are we seeing with true UFO craft, true alien vehicles? We are seeing a technology which is a sufficiently advanced science. Therefore, it appears to us like magic. It's so advanced, and we are such a primitive species still at this stage, that it truly appears to us like these craft can do magical things, when in fact it's just another kind of technology. It's just a kind of technology that we don't quite grasp. And, you know, this also leads us into the idea that, as Dr. Gary Nolan put it in some of his last interviews, there appears to be still right now 3 factions. There's 3 groups that are waging a war with each other behind closed doors at the Pentagon, NSAP, Special Access Program, programs that are taking place in the overall UFO file itself. And those 3 groups are the pro-disclosure group, and we have to realize they're all ulterior motives with all of these groups, right? This is a gray world. Black and white rarely exists, especially in the intelligence community. You have a pro-disclosure group who, by the way, seem also to be pushing the idea that it's because these things are a threat that disclosure needs to take place. That's convenient, right? When in fact there's multiple groups of ETs and some of them are a threat and some are not. Try explaining that to the everyday normies that are out there in the world. It's going to be a hard sell when they, I'm constantly reminded of this when I come across normal people who don't talk about these things, and what a difficult future they're going to have. Truly, I feel for them. And it's up to all of us. We're going to have to kind of help the normies along over the next few months and not point fingers at them and call them names and stuff like that. Even though they called us names and tinfoil hat wearers and the whole thing, they're beginning to wake up to the reality, the idea that they've been living in an illusion, just like the Matrix. And they're beginning to wake up from that illusion, and it's going to be cranky. They're going to be cranky when they wake up. You better believe it. So, but I wanted to talk about, in the wake of that little quote coming from the Navy patents themselves, saying that, we have knowledge of a way to build a device that can literally alter the fabric of reality itself. Right? That's interesting in the wake of some of these drone sightings that have taken place. And one of these drone sightings happened to be investigated by a reporter at Fox News who talked to the family that it occurred to, and it was in New Jersey, and a drone flew right over their car. And when it did, it literally changed the time on their clock. That is called an apotheum effect in UFO circles, UFO investigation circles. And real alien craft are using a kind of propulsion that creates apotheum effects on the nature of the fabric of time itself. And it's interesting that you're seeing little glimpses of that in some of these reports that are coming in. And not only that, but let's face it, you look online on social media sources, everything from X to Facebook, you name it, TikTok, whatever your poison is. And it's a non-stop onslaught of UFO videos. They are here. This conflict is happening. And there are elements within our government that know it's taking place and that may see an opportunity in which to use some of their back-engineered alien tech in such a way to get the populace behind them that they could trigger emergency powers. They could suspend the Constitution. They could then completely undermine this last election. And at some point in the future, when the so-called threat has passed, they can hold entirely new elections, and the whole threat of Donald Trump and his administration and these people that are not part of this military-industrial complex all goes away. So that is the possible conspiracy that we see playing before us. We'll have to see how all of this plays out. Like I said, irregardless, the webbot says big good changes are coming around, and those good changes are an end to the secrecy. I mean, the webbot basically says that, when the US dollar dies, so does UFO secrecy, because there's no money to keep it a secret anymore. In fact, lots and lots of things change in the immediate future, guys. So if you want the status quo, keep hoping that they can prop up the dollar, but we'll see what ends up happening. We're on a 9 going on 10-day losing streak in the Nasdaq or in the stock market, and it lost 1,200 points today. So are we seeing the beginning of all of this take place? Well, only time's going to tell. And that's the end of our show. You guys have a fantastic Christmas, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio. Thanks for being with me.